Welcome to my channel, a vlog that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The pearl choker pressed against my throat like a noose. I'd worn it every day since my 18th birthday, a constant reminder of who owned me, though the Moretti family preferred the word protected. My fingers traced the smooth surface as I stood before the full-length mirror in my assigned room at the compound, studying the woman they'd spent 23 years crafting. Perfect posture. Check. Hair swept into an elegant chignon. Check. Makeup subtle but flawless. Check. The navy dress they'd selected hugged my figure in all the appropriate places, modest enough for a future mob boss's wife, flattering enough to remind everyone that the Morettis only produced quality merchandise. That's what I was, really. Merchandise. Premium stock raised specifically for this transaction. Elena, your presence is requested in the library. Maria's voice filtered through the door, respectful, but firm. She'd been my handler since childhood, teaching me everything from which fork to use at diplomatic dinners to how to keep my face blank when men discussed murder over espresso. I smoothed my dress one final time and opened the door. Maria's weathered face softened slightly as she took me in. Bellissima, she murmured. Don Moretti will be pleased. I followed her through the compound's marble hallways, past armed guards who barely glanced at me. I'd lived here my entire life, but I'd never truly belonged. I was an investment, carefully cultivated, waiting to mature so I could be traded for whatever strategic advantage the Morettis needed most. Today, apparently, I'd finally ripened. Don Moretti sat behind his massive mahogany desk, flanked by his eldest son, Marco, and his consigliere, Antonio. 3 pairs of eyes tracked my entrance with the detachment of men evaluating livestock. Sit. Don Moretti gestured to the chair across from him. I sat, keeping my knees together, hands folded in my lap, chin at the perfect angle. Everything I'd been trained to do since I could walk. Elena. His voice carried the weight of decades of commands being obeyed without question. The time has come to fulfill your purpose within this family. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained serene. Never show fear. Never show anything. Adrian Blackwell has requested a union between our families. Don Moretti leaned back, his expression unreadable. You will marry him in 1 week. The name meant nothing to me, but I saw Marco's jaw tighten. Whoever Adrian Blackwell was, even the Moretti heir wasn't comfortable with this arrangement. He's American, Antonio added, his tone carrying subtle disapproval. New money. Built his empire in less than a decade through methods that make our traditional approaches look civilized. He's also, Don Moretti interrupted, the most powerful man in North America's underworld. An alliance with him expands our reach beyond anything we've achieved in 3 generations. His gaze fixed on me. You should be honored. Honored to be sold to a stranger. Honored to become the living contract between 2 criminal empires. Honored to finally serve my purpose after 23 years of preparation. Yes, Don Moretti. The words came automatically, smooth and compliant. I'm honored. The wedding will take place at St. Catherine's. Marco will handle the arrangements. He waved his hand dismissively. You may go. I stood, curtsied with practiced grace, and turned to leave. Elena. His voice stopped me at the door. Don't disappoint me. Everything you are, everything you've been given, it was all for this moment. Blackwell is not a man who tolerates imperfection. I understand. I met his eyes with the blank composure that had taken years to perfect. I won't disappoint you. The door closed behind me, and I stood in the hallway, alone for the first time since the meeting began. My hands trembled, just slightly, before I forced them still. Even my body's involuntary responses had been trained into submission. 7 days. I had 7 days before I became Mrs. Adrian Blackwell, property of a man I'd never met, in a life I'd never chosen. I made it back to my room before the mask cracked. I pressed my back against the door, fighting the scream building in my chest. All those years of etiquette lessons, language tutors, comportment training, learning to anticipate a man's needs before he voiced them, how to be present but invisible, decorative but useful, perfect but forgettable. I'd never been asked what I wanted, never been given a choice. Even now, standing on the precipice of my entire future, my opinion was irrelevant. The pearl choker felt tighter than ever. That evening, as Maria helped me undress for bed, I made a decision that surprised even me. I want to go out tomorrow night. Maria's hand stilled on the zipper of my dress. Out? Yes. I turned to face her. One night, that's all I'm asking. Elena, you know that's not permitted, especially now, so close to... I've been obedient my entire life. My voice stayed calm, but something fierce burned beneath the surface. I've done everything asked of me without question. I'm asking for one night to be something other than the Moretti's perfect product. Maria's expression softened with something that might have been pity. And where would you go? Anywhere that isn't here. I pulled the dress over my head and reached for my nightgown. Anywhere I can pretend, just for a few hours, that I'm someone else. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, to my shock, she nodded. I have a niece. She works at a club downtown. I'll make arrangements. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, Maria. Don't thank me yet. She helped me into bed, her weathered hands gentle. Freedom, even borrowed freedom, comes with consequences. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Adrian Blackwell, the stranger who'd bought my future. I thought of the life stretching ahead, every moment choreographed, every word scripted, every breath measured. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. The next evening, Maria smuggled me out through the service entrance. She'd brought clothes I'd never seen before. A black dress that hugged my curves in ways my usual wardrobe never did, heels that made my legs look impossibly long, makeup that transformed me from demure to dangerous. My niece will meet you inside, Maria said, as the car pulled up to a building with no sign, just a red door, and a line of people waiting to get in. She'll make sure you're safe. And Elena? She gripped my hand. Be back by 2. Any later, and the guards will notice. I nodded, stepping out into the cool night air. The bass from inside the club vibrated through the sidewalk, a pulse of freedom I'd never experienced. A bouncer the size of a small building looked me over, then unhooked the velvet rope without a word. Maria's niece had arranged things, apparently. Inside, the world exploded into sensation. Lights strobed across a packed dance floor. Bodies moved together in ways I'd never been allowed to move. The music was so loud it drowned out thought, leaving only feeling. I made my way to the bar, unsure what to do, but determined to do something. The bartender, a woman with purple hair and more piercings than I could count, leaned across the counter. First time? Was it that obvious? Yes, she grinned. What's your poison? I had no idea what to order. Surprise me. 5 minutes later, I held a drink that tasted like liquid courage and burned all the way down. The alcohol hit my empty stomach like a match to gasoline, warming me from the inside out. I shouldn't be here. I should be back at the compound, preparing to be the perfect bride for a man I'd never met. Instead, I was in a club that smelled like sweat and sin, surrounded by people who'd never heard of the Morettis, who had no idea that in 6 days I'd cease to exist as Elena and become simply Mrs. Blackwell. You look lost. The voice came from behind me, deep and rough around the edges, with an undertone of dark amusement. I turned and forgot how to breathe. He was tall, easily 6'3", with the kind of build that suggested violence was always an option. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that should have looked messy, but instead looked calculated. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes so intensely blue, they seemed to glow in the club's strobing lights. But it was the way he looked at me that made my pulse stutter. Like he could see through every carefully constructed layer, straight down to the terrified girl underneath. "I am lost," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the knowledge that this was my only night of freedom. Completely. His lips curved into a smile that was equal parts promising and predatory. "Lucky for you, I'm an excellent guide." He offered his hand. "Dance with me." I should have said no. Should have remembered Maria's warning about consequences. Should have been the good girl I'd spent 23 years becoming. Instead, I took his hand. "I don't know how to dance," I confessed as he led me toward the floor. "Not like this." "Then stop thinking," he murmured against my ear as we reached the packed bodies. "And just feel." His hands found my waist, pulling me against him. The music shifted, something slower but no less intense, and suddenly we were moving together. His body guided mine, his hands respectful but firm, and I let myself get lost in it. In him. In this moment that existed outside of time, outside of obligations, outside of everything waiting for me in 6 days. "What's your name?" he asked, his breath warm against my temple. I hesitated. Giving him my real name felt dangerous, like handing him a piece of myself I'd never get back. But lying felt worse. Elena. Elena. The way he said it made my name sound like a secret. No. I pressed my fingers against his lips, shocking both of us. "No names, not yours. Just for tonight, let's be strangers." Something flickered in those impossibly blue eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of a kindred desire to escape. "All right, Elena. Who won't let me give my name?" His hands tightened on my waist. "What are we escaping from?" The question hit too close to the truth. The future. "And what does your future look like?" "Like a cage." The words spilled out before I could stop them. Gilded and beautiful and absolutely suffocating. He pulled me closer, until there was no space left between us. "Then let's make tonight about being free." We danced until my feet ached, until the alcohol in my system mixed with the heat of his body against mine and created something dangerous and intoxicating. His hands never wandered inappropriately, but they never stopped touching me either. My waist, my back, my arms. Small points of contact that somehow felt more intimate than anything I'd ever experienced. Between songs, he bought me water, made sure I didn't drink too much, asked if I was okay. It was strange, this combination of raw attraction and careful consideration. "Come with me," he said eventually, taking my hand again. He led me through a side door, up a flight of stairs, and onto a rooftop terrace I hadn't known existed. The music from below was muffled here, the cool night air a relief after the heat of the club. The city spread out before us, lights glittering like fallen stars. I'd never seen it from this perspective, had never been allowed to explore beyond the compound's walls. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "Yes," he agreed. But when I looked over, he was watching me, not the view. "You are." Heat flooded my face. I'd been called beautiful before, but always in the clinical way men assess valuable objects. This felt different. Personal. "You don't know me," I said, gripping the railing. "I know you're running from something." He moved closer, his presence somehow both comforting and electrifying. "I know you're braver than you think, coming here alone." I know you have about 2 hours before you turn back into whatever it is you're supposed to be. My head snapped toward him. How did you... Your watch. He nodded toward my wrist, where I'd been compulsively checking the time. You've looked at it 17 times in the last hour. Whatever freedom you've stolen, it has an expiration date. Smart, observant, dangerous. I have to be back by 2, I admitted. He checked his own watch. Then we have 90 minutes left. What do you want to do with them? What did I want? It was such a foreign concept. I almost laughed. I don't know. I've never been asked that before. His expression darkened with something that might have been anger, though not at me. Never? Never. I turned to face the city again, the lights blurring together. Every moment of my life has been planned by someone else. What I wear, what I eat, how I speak, who I speak to. Everything. That's not living. His voice was low, fierce. That's existing. It's all I know. Silence stretched between us, heavy with understanding. Then his hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Tell me something true, he said. Something you've never told anyone else. I should have deflected. Should have maintained the walls I'd spent a lifetime building. Instead, I found myself saying, I'm getting married in 6 days to a man I've never met, and I'm terrified that I'll disappear completely into whoever he needs me to be. His grip on my hand tightened. You won't disappear. How do you know? He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness. Because even in one night, I can tell you're stronger than you think. You made the choice to come here, to take this night for yourself. That's not someone who disappears easily. You don't understand. Tears pricked my eyes. I've been trained my entire life to disappear, to be whatever's needed. I don't even know who I am underneath all the programming. Then let's find out. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Right now, in this moment, with no one watching and nothing to prove. Who are you, Elena? The question cracked something open inside me. For the first time in my life, I let myself feel instead of perform. Let myself want instead of comply. I'm someone who wishes tonight would never end, I whispered. His eyes searched mine, seeing too much, understanding more than I'd intended to reveal. Then slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, he leaned down and kissed me. It was nothing like I'd imagined a kiss would be. Soft and searching, asking rather than taking, his lips moving against mine with a patience that made my knees weak. I'd been kissed before, quick, clinical pecks from boys at formal events, orchestrated by the Morettis to teach me how to respond appropriately. This was different. This was a claiming and a question and a promise all at once. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking. I should get you back, he said, his voice rough with restraint. Before you turn into a pumpkin. I don't want to go back. The admission escaped before I could stop it. I know. He pressed another kiss to my forehead. But you have to. And Elena, whatever cage you're walking back into, remember this. You're stronger than it is. You just have to choose to be. The car Maria had arranged dropped me at the service entrance at 1:58 a.m. I slipped through the shadows like I'd been trained to do, avoiding the security cameras whose blind spots I'd memorized years ago. My lips still tingled from that kiss, my skin still warm from where his hands had touched me. Back in my room, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My carefully styled hair had come loose, falling in waves around my shoulders. My makeup was smudged, my lips swollen. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly kissed, thoroughly alive. I looked dangerous. Maria appeared like a ghost, helping me out of the borrowed clothes and back into my nightgown, erasing any evidence of my rebellion. But she couldn't erase the memory of those blue eyes, that rough voice, the way he'd made me feel seen for the first time in my life. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked softly, hanging the dress. "I don't know what I was looking for," I admitted, "but I found something." She studied me with knowing eyes. "Be careful, child. Memories of freedom can be more dangerous than actual chains." I climbed into bed, but sleep was impossible. I kept reliving every moment. The way he'd guided me through the crowd. The gentleness in his hands despite the violence suggested by his build. The understanding in his eyes when I'd confessed my fear of disappearing. Who was he? I'd never know. One beautiful mystery I'd carry into my cage. The next 5 days passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Dress fittings, menu selections, guest list approvals. I moved through it all with my usual perfect compliance, but something had shifted. That kiss, that single night of freedom, had awakened something I couldn't quite suppress. "You seem distracted," Marco observed during a final briefing about Adrian Blackwell, my soon-to-be husband. "Is something wrong?" "No." I kept my face blank. "Just nervous." "Don't be." His expression held no warmth. "Blackwell specifically requested you. He saw your photograph and approved the match immediately. You should be flattered." Approved, like I was a car he was buying, carefully inspecting before signing the papers. "What's he like?" I asked, allowing a hint of curiosity to show. Marco's jaw tightened. Ruthless, efficient. He took control of the American underworld in 5 years through methods that would make our father uncomfortable. But he's also smart enough to recognize the value in allying with us. "That's not what I meant." I kept my tone respectful but pressed on. "What's he like as a person?" "He's not a person, Elena." Marco leaned forward. "He's a force, a weapon, and you're about to become his. My advice? Don't try to understand him. Just obey him." The morning of the wedding arrived with cruel sunshine. Maria dressed me in a gown that cost more than most people earned in a year. White silk that flowed like water, a veil that obscured my face like a shroud. The pearl choker at my throat had been replaced by diamonds, my new owner's mark. "You look like a princess," Maria whispered, tears in her eyes. I looked like a sacrifice. The ceremony was at St. Catherine's, as Don Moretti had dictated. I waited in an antechamber, surrounded by women who'd spent the morning primping me into perfection. Through the doors, I could hear the organist playing, the murmur of guests taking their seats. The Moretti family was in attendance. The American families were here representing Blackwell's empire. 2 criminal dynasties gathering to witness the contract made flesh. 5 minutes, someone called. My hands trembled, so I clasped them together until my knuckles went white. In 5 minutes, I'd walk down that aisle. In 10, I'd belong to Adrian Blackwell. In an hour, I'd be Mrs. Blackwell, and Elena, whoever she might have been, would cease to exist. I thought of the stranger from the club, the way he'd kissed me like I was precious, the way he'd seen me as more than just a transaction. I'd never see him again, but at least I'd have that memory. At least I'd known, for one night, what it felt like to be wanted rather than owned. The doors opened, the wedding march began. Don Moretti appeared at my side to walk me down the aisle. He'd raised me, but there was no affection in his expression, only satisfaction at a deal well made. "Remember," he murmured as we began walking. "You represent the Moretti family now. Don't disappoint me." I kept my eyes lowered as we processed down the endless aisle, my heart hammering so hard I thought the entire church could hear it. The guests were a blur of expensive suits and designer dresses, all of them here to witness my voluntary imprisonment. We reached the altar. Through my veil, I could see the priest, Marco standing as a witness, and a tall figure in black, waiting to claim his bride. Adrian Blackwell. My husband. My owner. My future. Don Moretti placed my hand in his and stepped back. The groom's grip was firm, possessive, sending electricity up my arm that I immediately tried to suppress. This was a transaction. Nothing more. The priest began the ceremony, his voice droning on about love and commitment and holy matrimony. I focused on breathing, on maintaining my composure, on being exactly what everyone expected me to be. "You may now lift the veil," the priest intoned. My husband's hands reached for the delicate lace. Slowly he drew it back, revealing my face. And as I looked up, the world stopped spinning. Blue eyes, impossibly, devastatingly blue. Sharp jawline, dark hair, the same build that had felt so solid against me on that dance floor. No, this wasn't possible. The stranger from the club, the man who'd kissed me, who'd told me I was stronger than I thought, who'd given me one night of freedom, was Adrian Blackwell. Was my husband. Had been my husband all along. The shock must have shown on my face because his lips curved into a smile that was nothing like the one I remembered. This smile was cold, calculating, victorious. "Hello, Elena," he murmured, so softly only I could hear. Surprise. My vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. The one person who'd made me feel alive, the one memory I'd thought was mine alone. He'd been him all along. He'd known. He'd known who I was, what I was, and he'd played me like a fucking violin. "You," I started, but he squeezed my hand in warning. "Smile," he commanded, still in that low voice. "They're watching." So I smiled, because that's what I'd been trained to do. Smile while my world crumbled. Smile while the last piece of myself slipped away. The priest finished the ceremony. We exchanged rings. His fingers steady, mine shaking. He repeated vows about honoring and cherishing, lies wrapped in tradition. "You may kiss the bride." Adrian pulled me close, his hand at the small of my back, and kissed me with the same devastating thoroughness he had on that rooftop. But this time I knew it was all a lie. Every gentle touch, every understanding word, every moment I'd thought was real. It had all been part of his game. When he finally released me, I saw satisfaction in those blue eyes. He'd won. He'd claimed me in every way possible before I'd even realized the game had begun. The reception was held at the Moretti compound, in the ballroom I'd spent countless hours learning to navigate with perfect grace. I moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations from strangers, dancing with Adrian when required, playing the happy bride while fury built in my chest. Finally, as the party raged around us, he led me to a quiet corner. "You knew," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. "That night at the club, you knew exactly who I was." "Of course I knew." He handed me a glass of champagne. "Did you think I'd agree to marry someone without thoroughly researching them first?" "You played me." The words tasted like acid. "You made me think." "Think what?" He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "That you'd found some romantic escape from your gilded cage? That some mysterious stranger saw the real you and fell in love in one perfect night?" His laugh was cruel. "You found exactly what I wanted you to find, Elena. Nothing more." Why? I hated how my voice cracked. Why go through that charade? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought no one was watching. His hand came up to trace my jaw, an eerie echo of that night. "The Morettis raised you to be the perfect little mob wife. Obedient, decorative, forgettable. But I needed to know if there was anything underneath all that programming. Anything worth keeping. And?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. Was there? His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Oh yes, you're deliciously corruptible, Elena. You came to that club looking for freedom, but you found me instead, and now you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if any of it was real." The cruelty of it stole my breath. He'd taken the one beautiful thing I'd had, the one memory I'd thought was mine alone, and turned it into another form of control. "I hate you," I whispered. "Good." He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "Hatred is honest. Hatred means you feel something. That's more than most arranged marriages can claim." Before I could respond, Don Moretti appeared, beaming with satisfaction. "The happy couple. Adrian, you've made an excellent choice. Elena will serve you well." "She already has," Adrian replied, his hand possessive on my waist. "Better than I expected." They talked over my head about business, about the alliance, about shipping routes and territory agreements. I stood there, silent and seething, exactly as I'd been trained. But something had changed. That night at the club, even if it had been a lie, had shown me I was capable of wanting something for myself. Of choosing, even if just for a few hours, who I wanted to be. Adrian Blackwell thought he'd won. Thought he'd proven I was just another programmable trophy wife. He was wrong. Later, as the reception wound down, Adrian led me to the car that would take us to his estate, my new prison. The ride was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. His home was everything I'd expected. Modern, cold, expensive. A glass and steel monument to power with art that probably cost millions, and a view of the city that stretched for miles. "Your room is upstairs," he said as we entered, his tone businesslike. "Second door on the left." I stopped walking. "My room? Did you think I'd let you share mine?" His smile was cruel. "I don't trust you enough for that yet, Elena. You'll sleep alone until you prove yourself worthy of more." The dismissal stung more than I wanted to admit. And how do I prove myself? He turned, those blue eyes assessing me like I was a problem to solve. "By being exactly what I need you to be. Obedient in public, silent when required. Perfect in every way that matters." He stepped closer. "And by admitting that night at the club, as much as you want to hate me for it, it was the most real thing you've ever experienced." "It was a lie," I shot back. "Was it?" His hand came up to cut my face, and damn him, my body still responded to his touch. Or was it the only time either of us was honest? I wasn't playing the ruthless mob boss. You weren't playing the perfect bride. For a few hours, we were just two people trying to escape our cages. "Don't." I pulled away. "Don't try to make it something it wasn't. You manipulated me." "I gave you what you wanted," he corrected. "Freedom. Choice. The illusion of control. The fact that it was an illusion doesn't make the feeling any less real." He was right, and I hated him for it. That night had felt real. The connection between us had felt real. Even now, knowing it was all calculated, my body still remembered his touch. My lips still tingled from his kiss. "Get some rest," he said, turning away. "Tomorrow we begin your real education. The Morettis taught you to be a wife. I'm going to teach you to be my wife. There's a difference." "And if I refuse?" He looked back over his shoulder, a smile playing at his lips. "Then I'll make you wish you hadn't. But Elena?" His voice dropped to that rough timbre I remembered from the club. "I think you're going to enjoy your lessons more than you want to admit. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, in a strange bed, in a stranger's house, knowing my husband, God, my husband, was somewhere down the hall, probably sleeping peacefully after systematically destroying what little autonomy I'd thought I possessed? At dawn, I gave up pretending and showered in the obscenely luxurious bathroom attached to my room. Everything was top of the line. From the rainfall shower head to the heated floors to the towels that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe at the Moretti compound. A prison lined with silk was still a prison. I'd just finished dressing in clothes I found hanging in the closet, all in my size, all perfectly chosen, when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," I called, expecting a maid. Instead, Adrian entered carrying a breakfast tray. He'd clearly been awake for hours, already dressed in tailored black slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. His hair was still damp from his own shower. "I thought we could eat together," he said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "Since we didn't get much chance to talk last night." "You mean after you revealed that you'd been lying to me from the moment we met?" I kept my voice even, refusing to show how much his presence affected me. "I never lied to you." He pulled out a chair, gesturing for me to sit. When I didn't move, he added, "Please, Elena, sit." I sat because standing felt like wasting energy I'd need later, not because he'd asked. He poured coffee with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to serving himself, then slid a cup across to me. "I never lied," he repeated. "I simply didn't volunteer information you didn't ask for." That's a convenient distinction, but an accurate one. He took a sip of his own coffee, those blue eyes watching me over the rim. "You asked me not to give you my name. I honored that request." He was right, technically. I had asked him to keep his identity secret, but only because I'd had no idea who he was. "Why did you agree to the marriage?" I asked, changing tactics. "You could have any woman. Why accept the Moretti's offer?" "Because your family controls European smuggling routes I need." His honesty was almost insulting in its casualness. "And because when I saw your photograph, I thought you looked adequately attractive and appropriately compliant." "Adequately," I repeated flatly. "Then I had you investigated." He leaned back, studying me. "And the reports were interesting. 23 years old, never left the Moretti compound unsupervised. Trained since childhood to be the perfect mob wife. No friends outside the family. No interests beyond what you'd been taught to have. On paper, you were exactly what I needed. Beautiful, obedient, forgettable." How flattering. But then I thought about actually spending my life with someone so thoroughly broken in. His expression shifted, something darker moving behind his eyes. And I realized I needed to know if there was anything left underneath all that training. Any spark of the person you might have been if the Morettis hadn't gotten their hands on you first. "So you set a trap." "I created an opportunity." He set down his cup. "I had my people mention to Maria that you might enjoy an evening out. I knew she'd feel guilty enough about your situation to arrange it. I knew you'd choose somewhere anonymous, somewhere you could pretend to be normal for a few hours. And I knew," his voice dropped, "that you'd be desperate enough for connection that you'd let a stranger get close." The calculation of it made my stomach turn. "You manipulated everyone around me. I created circumstances that allowed you to make choices." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "And you chose, Elena. You chose to go to that club. You chose to accept my invitation to dance. You chose to follow me to the rooftop." He turned back to face me. "You chose to kiss me. I didn't know who you were. Didn't you?" His gaze pinned me in place. "You told me yourself. You were running from a man you'd never met, a future that terrified you. On some level, you had to know. Had to suspect. No. But doubt crept in. Had I known? Had some part of me recognized him?" He crossed back to the table, leaning down until his face was inches from mine. "Here's what I learned that night, Elena. Underneath all that Moretti programming, you're not broken. You're not empty. You're angry and afraid and desperate for someone to see you as more than a transaction." His finger traced my jaw, repeating that gesture from both the club and the wedding. "And I can work with that." I jerked away from his touch. I'm not a project for you to work on. No. He straightened. You're my wife, which means you're mine to shape however I see fit. I'm not property. Aren't you? His smile was cruel. The Morettis raised you to be exactly that. I'm just being honest about it. The difference is, he moved toward the door, I might actually give you a purpose beyond looking pretty and producing heirs. What purpose could I possibly serve you? He paused in the doorway. That remains to be seen. But Elena, that fire I saw in you at the club, the one you're trying so hard to hide right now, don't bury it. I'm going to need it. He left, leaving me alone with cold coffee and 1,000 questions. The next few days fell into a pattern. Adrian left early for business I wasn't privy to. I spent my days exploring my gilded cage, cataloging exits I'd never be allowed to use, and trying to understand my husband from the things he left behind. His home office was locked, naturally, but the library was open, and its contents told me more than any interrogation could have. Books on military strategy sat next to philosophical treatises. Art history volumes shared shelf space with financial analysis. He read in 4 languages, judging by the mixed collection. Adrian Blackwell was not just a thug who'd clawed his way to the top. He was educated, cultured, strategic. Somehow that made him more terrifying. On the 4th day of our marriage, he finally acknowledged my presence beyond breakfast small talk. We're going out tonight, he announced, appearing in the library where I'd been reading. I have a business dinner. You'll accompany me. Isn't that dangerous? I closed my book. Taking your new wife into the world of men who'd probably love to use her against you. Very perceptive. He smiled. That's exactly why I'm taking you. I want them to see you, to understand that touching what's mine comes with consequences. What consequences? He pulled me to my feet with surprising gentleness. The kind that end bloodlines, Elena. Now go get ready. Wear the red dress in your closet. 2 hours later, I descended the stairs in a red dress that was somehow both elegant and provocative, my hair styled in soft waves, diamonds at my throat and wrists. Adrian's diamonds, marking me as his possession. He waited at the bottom, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Appreciation, maybe, or satisfaction at how perfectly I fit the image he wanted to project. Beautiful, he murmured, offering his arm. They're going to hate me even more. Good. His laugh was genuine. I knew there was fire under all that ice. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Adrian's hand never left my lower back, as we were escorted to a private room where 5 men waited. I recognized the type immediately. They wore expensive suits but couldn't quite hide the violence underneath. Adrian's associates, or rivals, here to take his measure. Gentlemen, Adrian said smoothly, pulling out my chair before taking his own. My wife, Elena. Mrs. Blackwell. The oldest of the men, silver-haired and cold-eyed, inclined his head. We've heard much about the alliance between Blackwell and Moretti. You must be quite the prize. Elena is invaluable, Adrian corrected, his tone mild but carrying an edge. As you'll all come to understand. The dinner was a masterclass in dominance disguised as civility. Adrian controlled every conversation, parried every subtle probe, and made it clear that his new marriage didn't represent weakness but expansion. And I played my part perfectly, smiled when appropriate, remained silent when required, became the beautiful prop he'd trained me to be. But then, halfway through the main course, one of the men made a mistake. Tell me, Mrs. Blackwell, he said, his gaze traveling over me in a way that made my skin crawl. How are you adjusting to married life? It must be quite different from the Moretti compound. I'm adjusting well, thank you. I kept my voice light. I imagine Blackwell keeps you quite busy. The innuendo was barely veiled. He's known for his stamina in all endeavors. Adrian's hand found my thigh under the table, squeezing in warning. But something in me, that spark he claimed to want, refused to stay silent. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, Adrian has been remarkably patient. Unlike some men, he understands the value of anticipation. I met the man's gaze directly. Good things come to those who wait, or so I've been told. The table went silent. Then Adrian laughed, a genuine sound of delight. Gentlemen, I believe my wife just put you all on notice. His hand on my thigh moved higher, possessive. Perhaps we should discuss business while the ladies retire. There are no other ladies present, I pointed out. Then perhaps you should take a walk, Tesoro. The endearment rolled off his tongue with casual possession. I'll collect you when we're finished. It was a dismissal, a reminder that despite my small rebellion, he was still in control. I stood, letting my hand trail across his shoulder as I passed. Don't keep me waiting too long, husband. I'm not known for my patience. I felt his gaze on me all the way out of the room. Adrian found me on the restaurant's terrace 20 minutes later. I'd been standing at the railing, looking out at the city and wondering if I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. That was reckless, he said, coming to stand beside me. Was it? I didn't look at him. You said you wanted fire. I gave you fire. I said don't bury it. His hand came up to turn my face toward him. I didn't say throw it at dangerous men who might decide you're too much trouble. Then what did you expect? I pulled away from his touch. You want me compliant, but not broken. Obedient, but interesting. A possession with personality. It's an impossible standard, Adrian. I know. The admission surprised me. That's what makes you perfect. I'm not perfect. Frustration bled into my voice. I'm confused and angry and terrified. You played me like a game, married me under false pretenses, and now you're molding me into whatever shape serves you best. I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. My father was a drunk who beat my mother until she stopped fighting back entirely. By the time I was old enough to stop him, she was already gone. Not dead, but absent. A ghost wearing my mother's face. His voice was devoid of emotion, which somehow made it worse. I swore I'd never do that to someone. Never break them so completely they forgot how to be human. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. He finally looked at me. It's supposed to explain why I needed to know if you were already broken before I married you. Why that night at the club mattered. I needed to see if there was anything left to work with, or if the Morettis had already turned you into my mother. The raw honesty stunned me. This wasn't the calculated mob boss or the manipulative husband. This was Adrian Blackwell, the man, showing me a wound I suspected he'd never shown anyone else. I'm not broken, I said quietly. But I'm not whole either. The Morettis took pieces of me I'll never get back. Then we'll forge new pieces. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Together. Why? I searched his face for answers. Why does it matter to you what I am? Because, he said, his thumb tracing my lower lip, I'm going to be spending my life with you. I'd prefer not to share it with an empty shell. It wasn't love. It wasn't even particularly kind. But it was honest, and somehow that mattered more. What if I can't be what you want? The question escaped before I could stop it. What if underneath all the programming there's nothing? There's something. His certainty was absolute. I felt it that night at the club. I saw it tonight when you shut down that bastard's comments. You just need permission to let it out. And you're giving me permission? I'm giving you a choice. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back. Keep being the perfect Moretti bride, silent, obedient, forgettable. or become something more interesting, something dangerous. His lips hovered over mine, something mine in every sense of the word. That's not really a choice. No, he agreed. But it's the illusion of one. And sometimes that's enough. He kissed me then, and damn him, my body still responded. Still remembered that night when I'd thought this was real, when I'd believed someone actually saw me. Maybe he did see me. Maybe that was worse. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and furious with myself for wanting more. "Come on," Adrian said, taking my hand. "Let's go home. We both have lessons to learn about each other." As we left the restaurant, his hand possessive on my lower back, I realized something that should have terrified me. I wanted to learn. Wanted to understand this complicated, dangerous man who'd claimed me as his own. The cage was still a cage. But at least now, I understood the bars were there as much to keep the world out as to keep me in. The week after the dinner, Adrian began what he called my real education. Every morning he'd appear at my door with coffee and a new lesson. "Today you learn about my business," he'd say. Or, "Today we discuss strategy." Or, "Today I teach you the difference between power and control." I should have resisted, should have maintained the cold distance between us. Instead, I found myself looking forward to these sessions, to the way Adrian spoke to me like I had a brain worth engaging. The Morettis had taught me languages, etiquette, how to run a household. Adrian taught me how to read people, how to identify threats, how to use my perceived weakness as a weapon. "You're the perfect spy," he explained one morning as we reviewed photographs of various family heads. "No one expects the decorative wife to actually be paying attention. They'll say things in front of you they'd never say in front of me. You want me to spy for you? I want you to help me." He tapped a photo. "This man, Dmitry Volkov, controls the Russian pipelines I need access to. He'll be at the charity gala next week. I want you to charm him." "Charm him?" I raised an eyebrow. "You want your wife to flirt with another man?" "I want my wife to extract information while he's distracted by her beauty." Adrian's smile was sharp. "Think you can manage that without developing actual feelings?" The challenge in his voice sparked something competitive in me. "I think I can manage not to fall for a middle-aged Russian gangster. Yes." "Good." His hand found my knee under the table, a casual touch that nevertheless sent electricity through me. "Because if you did, I'd have to kill him. And that would be bad for business." It should have sounded like a joke. It didn't. The more time I spent with Adrian, the more I understood how he'd built his empire. He was brilliant, calculating, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. But he was also capable of surprising gentleness, of patience I hadn't expected. Like when he found me crying in the library one afternoon, overwhelmed by memories of the life I'd never get to live. He didn't offer platitudes or tell me to stop. He simply sat beside me, his presence solid and strangely comforting, until the tears dried up on their own. "Better?" he asked quietly. "No." I wiped my face. "But thank you for not making me pretend I was." "I prefer you honest." His hand found mine. Even when honesty is painful. These moments, brief glimpses of the man beneath the armor, were more dangerous than any manipulation. They made me want to trust him, to believe that maybe this marriage could become something more than a transaction. But then he'd retreat behind his walls, become the cold mob boss again, and I'd remember exactly what I was to him. A useful asset wrapped in an attractive package. 2 weeks after the wedding, Adrian's control began to slip in ways I don't think he intended. It started small. His hand lingering a bit too long when he helped me from the car, his gaze tracking me across a room when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he'd find excuses to touch me, adjusting my necklace, brushing my hair from my face, his hand constantly finding my lower back. And God help me, I started doing the same, letting my fingers trail across his shoulders when I passed, leaning into his space when we reviewed documents together, wearing the dresses I knew he preferred. It was a game of brinkmanship, seeing who would break first. The night of the charity gala, I wore gold, a dress that poured over my body like liquid metal, leaving my back bare and making my skin glow. Adrian's sharp inhale when I descended the stairs was gratifying. "You're trying to kill me," he muttered, helping me into my coat. "Is it working?" His hand slid up my bare spine, sending shivers through me. "Careful, wife. You keep pushing, and I might push back. Promises. Promises." The gala was at an art museum, filled with Manhattan's elite and the criminals who controlled them. I played my part perfectly, charming Dmitry Volkov, while mentally cataloging everything he revealed about his operation, dancing with various power players while Adrian watched from across the room with possessive intensity. But it was when Adrian finally cut in, pulling me away from Volkov mid-conversation, that the night's careful control shattered. "We're leaving," he said, his voice tight. "What? Why?" "I was in the middle of... Now, Elena." His hand on my waist was gentle but inflexible. "We're leaving now." He practically dragged me to the car, his jaw set in a way I'd learned meant he was barely containing something volatile. "What happened?" I demanded once we were moving. "Did I do something wrong?" "Wrong?" He turned those blue eyes on me, and I saw desire there, raw and barely leashed. "You were perfect. So fucking perfect that every man in that room wanted you, including me." The admission hung between us, charged with everything we'd been dancing around for weeks. "Adrian, do you know what it's like?" he interrupted. "Watching you work, watching you smile at those men, touch their arms, laugh at their pathetic jokes. Knowing you're mine but not really having you. You said I'd sleep alone until I proved myself worthy. I lied." His hand found my thigh, sliding up dangerously high. "I've wanted you in my bed since our wedding night, since before that. Since the club, if I'm being honest. But I thought if I kept my distance, I could maintain control. Turns out I was wrong." My heart raced. "So what changed?" Volkov put his hand on your lower back. Adrian's voice went cold. "And I wanted to break every finger. Then Michaels asked you to dance, and I wanted to shoot him in the kneecaps. Then Donovan complimented your dress, and I wanted to burn the whole fucking museum down with everyone in it." He leaned closer. "You've made me into something I swore I'd never be, Elena. Jealous, possessive, barely civilized." "Good," I breathed. "Because you made me want my cage, made me forget why I was supposed to hate you, made me look forward to your lessons and your touch and the way you actually talk to me like I matter. You do matter." His hand cupped my face. More than I expected. More than I wanted. When we reached the house, we barely made it inside before he was kissing me. Not the calculated kisses from before, but something desperate and honest. His hands were everywhere, pulling me against him, molding me to his body like he was trying to absorb me. "Tell me to stop," he demanded against my lips. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away right now." I should have maintained the last boundary between us. Instead, I pulled him closer. "Don't stop," I whispered. "Don't you dare stop." He swept me into his arms, carrying me up the stairs to his bedroom. Not the guest room I'd been sleeping in, but his space, his territory. The door slammed shut behind us, and suddenly his control shattered completely. "I'm going to make you mine," he promised, laying me on his bed. "Not because the Morettis gave you to me, not because of any business arrangement, but because you want to be mine. Say it, Elena. Say you want this. I want this. The admission felt like surrender and victory all at once. I want you. What followed was nothing like I'd imagined. There was gentleness mixed with possession, patience alongside urgency. Adrian worshipped my body like he was memorizing it, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch into his touch, what made me say his name like a prayer. And when we finally came together, it felt like a claiming in the truest sense. Not ownership, but something more complex. A choice to be his, and his choice to be mine in return. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his hand stroking my hair with surprising tenderness. This changes things, I said quietly. Does it? His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. We were already married, already bound together legally. This just makes it real. What if I can't separate the man from the monster? The question I'd been afraid to ask. What if I can't love one without accepting the other? Then don't separate them. His voice was firm. I am both, Elena. The man who kisses you like you're precious, and the monster who'd kill anyone who tried to take you from me. If you want me, you get both versions. That should terrify me. But it doesn't. He tilted my chin up, making me meet his eyes. Because you're both too. The perfect Moretti bride, and the woman who challenges me at every turn. The obedient wife and the spy I'm training to be dangerous. We match, Tesoro. In all our contradictions. He was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being just Elena the transaction and become Elena the wife, Elena the partner, Elena the woman who was learning to want the cage as much as the freedom beyond it. What happens now? I asked. Now we build something together. His arms tightened around me. An empire, a marriage, a life, whatever you want it to be. I want honesty. I propped myself up on his chest. No more games. No more manipulation. If this is real, then it has to be built on truth. Truth. He considered that. All right. Truth. I married you for business, but I'm keeping you for myself. Truth. Watching you become the woman you were meant to be is the most satisfying thing I've ever accomplished. Truth. I'm falling for you in ways that terrify me and make me feel more alive than anything else ever has. My breath caught. Adrian. Your turn, he interrupted. Give me truth, Elena. I took a breath, gathering courage. Truth. I hated you for lying to me at the club. Truth. I'm starting to understand why you did it. Truth. This marriage has become the first choice I've ever truly made for myself, even though it was made for me. I leaned down, my lips hovering over his. And truth, I'm falling too. He kissed me then, sealing the admission between us. And for the first time since being told I'd marry a stranger, I felt something like hope. The next 2 months transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. Adrian kept his promise. No more games, just brutal honesty about who we were and what we were building together. He began including me in business discussions, valuing my observations in ways that shocked his associates. The decorative wife they'd expected turned out to have a talent for reading people, for spotting lies and weaknesses they couldn't see. She's an asset. I heard Dmitry Volkov tell Adrian after a particularly successful negotiation. I underestimated her. Many will make that same mistake. Let them, Adrian replied, his hand finding mine under the table. Their underestimation is our advantage. But with increased involvement came increased danger. I began to understand the true scope of Adrian's empire, the violence necessary to maintain it, the enemies circling constantly, waiting for any sign of weakness, including Marcus Castellano, an old rival who'd been making moves against Adrian's territory. He's testing me, Adrian explained one night as we reviewed security reports, trying to see if marriage has made me soft. Has it? I asked. His smile was sharp. No, but it's given me something to protect beyond myself. That makes me more dangerous, not less. I believed him. I'd seen what Adrian was capable of when threatened. Had watched him dismantle a competing operation with surgical precision after they'd made the mistake of approaching me at a restaurant. The message had been clear. Touching Elena Blackwell meant death. But Marcus Castellano wasn't easily deterred. His provocations escalated. Shipments hijacked, key personnel bribed away, even a direct insult delivered at a neutral meeting where violence was forbidden. He wants me to react emotionally, Adrian told me, his jaw tight with controlled fury. To make a mistake he can exploit. So what do? We show him I'm not the only Blackwell he needs to fear. His eyes met mine. You're going to help me destroy him, Tesoro, and you're going to enjoy it. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus had a weakness, his pride. He couldn't resist an opportunity to humiliate Adrian publicly, especially if it involved the wife everyone assumed was just decorative. So we gave him that opportunity. The next family summit, hosted at a neutral location, became our battlefield. I arrived dressed to kill in black, diamonds at my throat, every inch the perfect mob wife. But I'd also memorized every weakness in Marcus's operation, every skeleton in his family's closet, every piece of leverage we'd spent 2 weeks gathering. Mrs. Blackwell. Marcus approached with false warmth. How lovely you look. Marriage clearly agrees with you. Mr. Castellano. I smiled, saccharine sweet. I've heard so much about you. Your reputation for longevity is impressive. The subtle insult, suggesting he'd survived through luck rather than skill, landed perfectly. His smile tightened. I simply adapt better than my competitors, he replied. Your husband, for instance, seems quite adapted to domestic life. Quite different from the ruthless man we all knew. Oh, Adrian hasn't changed. I leaned in conspiratorially. He's simply found better targets for his ruthlessness. Did you know your nephew Stefano has been skimming from your casino profits? Or that your consigliere Vittorio has been selling information to the FBI? I straightened, my smile never wavering. My husband asked me to mention that he has evidence of both, along with documentation of 14 other illegal activities your organization has engaged in. He thought you might want to clean your own house before attempting to raid his. Marcus's face went white, then red. You... Careful. Adrian appeared at my side, his hand possessive on my waist. My wife is merely delivering a message. What you do with that information is your choice, though I'd recommend acting quickly. The FBI is quite eager to make an example of someone, and I'd hate for it to be you when we could be allies instead. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Revealed just enough information to prove we had more. Offer a way out that required submission. Make it clear that continued antagonism would be costly. Marcus had no choice but to accept the extended olive branch. As we left the summit, Adrian pulled me close. You were magnificent. I learned from the best. No, he corrected. You became the best. There's a difference. But our victory came with a cost. That night, as we celebrated with his inner circle, I saw the way some of them looked at me now. Not with dismissal, but with a new wariness. I'd become a player in their world, which meant I'd also become a potential threat. They're afraid of you, Adrian murmured against my ear as we danced. As they should be. Is that what you wanted? To make me as dangerous as you? I wanted to make you dangerous enough to survive without me. His expression turned serious. This world we live in, Tesoro, it's unstable. Enemies can strike at any moment. I needed to know you could protect yourself if something happened to me. Nothing's going to happen to you. Elena, He pulled me closer. Promise me something. If anything ever does happen. Stop. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't talk like that. But the conversation left me unsettled. Adrian was preparing for a threat I couldn't see, training me for a future where he might not be there to protect me. A week later, everything changed. Adrian had a meeting with a new supplier, someone who'd approached with an offer too good to refuse. I'd insisted on coming along, my instincts screaming that something was wrong. Stay in the car, Adrian instructed as we pulled up to the warehouse. This shouldn't take long. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread crawling up my spine. Adrian, wait. Trust me. He kissed me, quick and hard. I'll be fine. I watched him enter the warehouse with his security team, every nerve on edge. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10, 15. Then I heard gunfire. Everything after that happened in slow motion and fast forward simultaneously. The driver grabbed for his weapon. I was out of the car before he could stop me, running toward the warehouse even as my brain screamed that this was suicide. More gunshots, screaming, the acrid smell of gunpowder. I burst through the door to find chaos. Bodies on the ground, Adrian's men, the supposed suppliers, and in the center of it all, Adrian, standing but swaying, his white shirt blooming red. No. The word ripped from my throat as I ran to him. No, no, no. Elena. His voice was weak. I told you to stay in the car. Shut up. I caught him as his legs gave out, lowering us both to the ground. Blood soaked through my dress. So much blood. Stay with me, Adrian. Stay with me. His hand found my face, leaving crimson fingerprints. You need to call Antonio. Tell him code silver. He'll know what to do. I'm not leaving you. You have to. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. They'll come back. You need to be safe. I don't care about safe. Tears streamed down my face. I care about you, you stubborn bastard. You don't get to die on me. Not now. Not when you what? Even bleeding out, he needed to hear it. When I love you. The words exploded out of me, messy and true. I love you. All of you. The monster and the man and everything in between. So you don't get to leave me. Do you hear me? You don't get to die. Something shifted in his eyes. Say it again. I love you. I pressed my hands against the wound in his side, trying to stem the bleeding. I love you, Adrian Blackwell. I choose you. I choose this cage and this life and this terrifying, impossible marriage. But you have to stay. You have to fight. Okay, he whispered. Okay, Tesoro. For you. I'll fight. Sirens wailed in the distance. Antonio and reinforcements burst through the door, taking in the carnage. Get him to Dr. Rivera, Antonio barked. Now! They loaded Adrian into an SUV, me refusing to leave his side even as they tried to separate us. His hand stayed locked with mine, his blood staining everything. Don't let go, I begged. Please don't let go. Never. His grip tightened fractionally. You're mine, Elena. And I'm yours. That means forever. The drive to Dr. Rivera's private clinic was the longest of my life. I held Adrian's head in my lap, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. Promising to love him forever. Threatening to kill him myself if he dared die. He stayed conscious through sheer force of will, his eyes never leaving my face. You really do love me, he said, almost wonderingly. Yes, you idiot. I really do. Even knowing what I am, what I've done, especially knowing. I stroked his hair, my tears falling onto his face. You're mine, Adrian. The monster and the man. I claim them both. His smile was weak but genuine. Best decision you ever made. Debatable, I said, even as I held him tighter. But it's my decision. Mine. Dr. Rivera's operating room was underground, hidden beneath his legitimate practice. A place for treating injuries that couldn't be explained to proper authorities, staffed with medical professionals who knew when to ask questions and when to simply work. They tried to separate me from Adrian, but I'd become someone they couldn't simply dismiss. The decorative wife had evolved into the boss's partner, and my refusal to leave brooked no argument. I'm staying, I said flatly. Work around me or explain to him why you let his wife watch him die alone. Dr. Rivera nodded curtly. Scrub in. If you're staying, you follow my rules. I spent the next 3 hours watching skilled hands piece my husband back together. The bullet had collapsed his lung, nicked an artery. Another inch to the left and he would have bled out before we reached help. The knowledge that I'd almost lost him made something fierce and permanent settle into my bones. This wasn't gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome or any of the psychological explanations I might have used to excuse my feelings. This was love. Raw, complicated, absolutely certain love. When they finally wheeled Adrian to recovery, I followed, claiming the chair beside his bed like it was my throne. Antonio tried to get me to rest, to change out of my blood-soaked dress, to eat something. I refused it all. Who did this? I asked, my voice cold enough to freeze blood. Who ordered the hit? Antonio hesitated, clearly uncertain how much to share with me. I stood, meeting his eyes with steel I'd learned from my husband. I'm not asking as Adrian's wife seeking protection. I'm asking as his partner who helped dismantle Marcus Castellanos' operation. Who did this, Antonio? He recognized the shift in me, the final transformation from asset to equal. Castellano, he admitted. He survived your intelligence drop by throwing his own people under the bus. This was retaliation, a message that he won't tolerate being humiliated. I see. I looked back at Adrian, still unconscious but breathing steadily. And what's our response? Our response? Antonio raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Blackwell. Elena, I interrupted. Call me Elena. And yes, our response. Because I'm not sitting here waiting for Adrian to recover while Castellano thinks he won. Understanding dawned in Antonio's eyes. What did you have in mind? Over the next 72 hours, while Adrian fought for consciousness, I did something I never imagined I'd be capable of. I became him. With Antonio's help, I stepped into Adrian's role, made decisions about territory, authorized defensive measures, sent messages to allies that the Blackwell organization was not weakened by its leader's injury. It was strengthened by having 2 leaders instead of 1. And I planned Marcus Castellanos' downfall with the same precision Adrian had taught me. You're certain about this? Antonio asked as we reviewed the final plan. Once we move, there's no going back. You'll be marked as more than just Adrian's wife. You'll be a legitimate power in your own right. Good. I signed the authorization he needed. Let them mark me. Let them see what happens when you try to kill my husband. The plan was elegant. We didn't kill Castellano. That would have been too quick, too clean. Instead, we dismantled everything he'd built. His businesses, his alliances, his reputation. We released the evidence of his betrayals to the other families, turned his own people against him. And by the time we were finished, Marcus Castellano was alive but ruined. A living example of what happened when you came after the Blackwells. Adrian woke on the 4th day to find me asleep in the chair beside his bed. Files scattered around me like artillery. His hand found mine, and I jerked awake. You're awake. I launched myself at him, careful of his injuries, but unable to maintain distance. You're awake. Easy to Soro. His voice was rough but steady. You'll hurt yourself. I don't care. I pressed my face against his neck, breathing him in. You're alive. That's all that matters. His hand stroked my hair. Antonio told me what you did, How you held everything together. How you destroyed Castellano. He tried to kill you. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Did he think I'd just let that go? Pride and love warred in his expression. You became everything I knew you could be. I became what I needed to be to protect what's mine. I cupped his face. You're mine, Adrian Blackwell, and I protect what's mine. With a ruthlessness that would make me proud if it wasn't slightly terrifying. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. You've become dangerous, Elena. You made me dangerous. I climbed carefully onto the bed beside him, fitting myself against his uninjured side. You taught me how to use my perceived weakness as a weapon, how to be underestimated, how to strike when no one's expecting it. I created a monster. But he was smiling. No. I met his gaze steadily. You gave me permission to become who I always was underneath the programming. The Morettis tried to break me into submission. You helped me forge my broken pieces into something stronger. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you told me you loved me. While you were bleeding out, yes. Did you mean it? I thought about lying, about protecting myself from vulnerability. But we'd promised each other honesty. Yes, I said simply. I love you. The man who gave me my first taste of freedom in that club. The monster who manipulated me into marriage. The husband who teaches me to be dangerous. The partner who trusts me with his empire. I pressed my lips to his. All of you, Adrian. I love all of you. Even though I lied to you, manipulated you, turned your wedding into a trap, because you did all that, and still gave me more choice than I'd ever had in my life. I traced his jaw carefully. You could have kept me as a trophy. Instead, you made me into your equal. That's not something I can hate you for. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I smiled. But you're stuck with me anyway. For better or worse, remember? Till death do us part. His hand found mine. Though I think we proved that not even attempted murder can separate us now. Don't. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't joke about that. I almost lost you, Adrian. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Watching you bleed, thinking I'd never get to tell you how I felt? I do, actually. His expression turned serious. Because I felt it when I was lying there thinking about all the things I'd never said to you. All the ways I should have told you I loved you instead of showing it through control and possession. You love me? My heart stuttered. From that first night at the club, probably. He pulled me closer. I told myself it was strategy, that I needed to see if you were worth keeping. But the truth? I knew the moment you challenged me to let you be someone other than what the Morettis made you. I knew I'd found someone extraordinary. We're broken people, Adrian. I rested my head on his shoulder. Both of us damaged in ways that can't be fixed. Then we'll be broken together. His arms tightened around me, building something stronger from our damaged pieces. The next few weeks of Adrian's recovery solidified my position in his organization. I didn't just fill in while he healed. I became his partner in every sense. The families learned to respect Elena Blackwell not as an extension of her husband, but as a power in her own right. And Adrian let me. Trusted me with pieces of his empire, asked my opinion on strategy, deferred to my judgment when my instincts proved sharper than his. We make a good team, he said one evening as we reviewed territorial maps in his office, both of us working from his desk because neither wanted the distance of separate spaces. We make a terrifying team, I corrected. The entire underworld is afraid of us now. Good. His hand found mine across the paperwork. Fear keeps us alive. So does love. I turned my hand to link our fingers. I know that's not very practical or strategic, but it's true. Love is the most strategic advantage we have. His blue eyes held mine. Because anyone who threatens one of us threatens both of us. That makes us unpredictable, dangerous. Our enemies can't calculate against emotion. Is that why you love me? Strategic advantage? I love you because you terrify me and fascinate me in equal measure. Because you're the first person I've ever trusted completely. Because you saw all my worst parts and chose me anyway. He pulled me into his lap, careful of his healing injuries. Strategy has nothing to do with it, Tesoro. You're just mine. And you're mine. I kissed him softly. My monster. My partner. My choice. 3 months after the assassination attempt, we hosted a summit of the major families. A demonstration of strength. A message that the Blackwells were not just surviving, but thriving. I stood beside Adrian as he addressed the assembled bosses, no longer content to be decoration. I was his partner, and everyone in that room knew it. Some of you thought my marriage made me weak, Adrian said, his hand finding mine. That giving my heart made me vulnerable. You were wrong. My wife has proven herself not just an asset, but a force to be reckoned with. Anyone who threatens her answers to both of us. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects our entire organization. And anyone foolish enough to test that will learn what Marcus Castellano learned, that the Blackwells protect their own with absolute ruthlessness. The message was clear. I wasn't a weakness to exploit. I was a line no one should cross. Later, as we stood on the balcony of our home, watching the city lights, Adrian pulled me against him. Regrets? He asked. I thought about the girl I'd been, raised to be property, trained to be forgettable, resigned to a life of obedient silence. Then I thought about who I'd become. Dangerous, powerful, loved and loving in return. None, I said honestly. This cage you built for me? It became a kingdom, and I became its queen. Our kingdom, he corrected, built together from broken pieces and second chances. Our kingdom, I agreed, defended together, ruled together, loved together. He turned me in his arms, his lips finding mine. Forever, Tesoro. Forever, I echoed against his mouth. I'd run into that club looking for one night of freedom before surrendering to a stranger's control. Instead, I'd found a partner who challenged me to become more than I'd ever imagined. A monster who taught me how to be dangerous. A husband who gave me real choices even when the circumstances were chosen for me. The cage was still a cage, but we'd built it together, and we held the keys jointly. And somehow, that made all the difference. Elena Moretti had disappeared the night I married Adrian Blackwell. In her place stood Elena Blackwell, wife, partner, queen of an empire built on blood and love, and the fierce certainty that we belonged to each other absolutely. It wasn't the life I'd been promised. It was better. It was mine.